this is a lot of people's dream job. And they
Mhm.
don't even necessarily know it. They might just want to work in sports and I've been able to do it for 7 years at just about every major sports venue in my home state for most of the major professional sports teams that we have in our market. Now, I know it's not the Dallas Cowboys, not the New York Yankees, not the Boston Celtics. I know what Connecticut has and doesn't have. But if it was the Celtics or the Yankees, or if I was in Dallas or LA or New York or Boston, I probably wouldn't have this job. The likelihood of being able to forge the relationships that you talk about, to me, have been only achievable in a place like the state of Connecticut.
Welcome. So you have Connor Geary, also known as you're known as Game Day Connor. Is that right?
Game Day Connor is definitely my more popular name these days.
All right. And where did that come about? Is that because of your role at the Yard Goats, or is that you've had that as since you were a kid, or?
No, yeah. So the name was given to me by a UConn student named Tommy, and Tommy was a tuba player in the UConn band. And when I first started announcing for the Yard Goats and then for UConn, game day did not exist, and I was walking after a game outside of Gamble Pavilion back to my car, and I saw Tommy as the band was kind of getting all their stuff together and ready to leave, and I called him Tuba Tommy, and he called me Game Day Connor, and it stuck.
So,
So I give all credit to Tommy every time I can tell the story. It's on my website, Tuba
do we know
Tommy.
do we know who like where Tommy is right now?
He graduated. I saw him, I think, for the championship watch party, but I don't know what he's up to these days. But I believe he did graduate.
Interesting. All right,
Yeah.
well, let me back up a little bit because again, I know that the I want to talk about like how you got into this, and you have obviously a very nice voice, and I want to talk to you about how you did all that. So, are you a Connecticut guy?
Yeah. Yeah. I was born in Hartford.
Oh, you're
Um,
Hartford. Okay.
yeah, I was born in Hartford. My parents lived in the west end of Hartford when I was born. Shortly thereafter, we moved to Manchester, right off of West Middle Turnpike.
Okay.
I grew up. My early childhood was in Manchester. I went to kindergarten, elementary school, middle school in Manchester, at a small parochial private school called Assumption, which is no longer around.
Right.
And then when I was in middle school, we moved to East Hartford, kind of off of Forest and Forbes in that neck of the woods,
Oh yeah.
and lived there for many, many, many years, all through college. My parents had that house. I went to East Catholic High School, graduated East Catholic class of 2005, and I did college in the Albany, New York area. I went to a
All right, hold on. Let me slow you down. Let me slow you down a second. So you're obviously a Greater Hartford area kid.
yeah,
Any siblings?
I have a younger sister. My sister Nora is 5 years younger than me.
Okay. And you're what? What's your how old are you?
I'm 37.
37. Okay, right. I
Yeah,
was trying to do the math in my head, but I I
yeah.
couldn't. So your sister's younger than you. So in and tell me about your folks. Are your folks, did they have sort of this, obviously, I don't know, am I right to assume that you're an extrovert?
Yeah, I mean, what people see of me is a very extroverted side. I mean, I've talked about this before that, I'm very okay being quiet and doing nothing, but I'm not known for that. And my friends would tell you that, I'm the talker in the group, and I actually dispute that. Um, I just think that I'm sort of synonymous with being loud these days. But yeah, no, I would absolutely classify myself as an extrovert by nature, um, and have been, my whole life. I mean, I was on stage doing local community children's theater when I was 8 years old.
Ah, there you go.
So that kind of started the overcoming of stage fright, the appreciation for performance, and all of that started at a very young age. Now, um, I was I had decided, because I was certain that I did not have a professional performance career ahead of me. I was not gifted enough. I did not have a good enough voice. I didn't have a good enough vocal range. And I also didn't have an interest in bouncing from audition to audition in New York City trying to make it big.
Right.
That was just not ever on my bingo card. So while I enjoyed it very much, and as a hobby, I I I loved it. I thought that I was good enough to continue doing it, but I knew I wasn't going to make a career, or knew I was not going to make a career out of performance.
Oh,
Certainly not
interesting.
stage and musical theater and things like that.
So, did you have an appreciation? Like, did you go to shows as a kid, or was it just you were doing stuff? Did you go to like Broadway shows or
Yeah,
or
sure.
whatever?
I mean, not religiously, but
Oh,
I,
right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been to Broadway many times. I used to see a lot of my friends when they would go off and do shows. I would watch them at their shows, and so always loved the stage. Always loved theatrical performance. Always loved musical theater. I was definitely like a choir. I was in choir. Like every choir that was offered at East Catholic, I was in. Acted through high school and even into college. I did. Everything I did up until college was musical production. I was probably in something like 40 or 50 different performances, um, again, all as a hobby. But then in college, I joined the theater group there, the club, and did three dramatic productions. One of them was Shakespearean, and two of them were a bit more modern, but kind of got away from musicals and did more dramatic acting. Um, I won some awards in college for acting.
Ah,
I was invited to the American College Theater Festival on two
you're
of the three occasions.
so you're what do they call like a drama nerd, right? Isn't that what they call you guys
Well,
or
it's interesting because I was also like, yeah, so I was right, a theater kid,
theater
much
kid?
like
Yeah,
right. So I was definitely a theater kid.
right.
Admittedly, a lot of my social circle was also, the sports teams and the soccer
Oh,
teams. And
interesting.
so I straddled both
Both worlds.
social worlds. Yeah, for sure.
Did
Uh,
you play sports too, or?
yeah, I played 4 years of soccer at East Catholic. I kind of gave up baseball when I was younger, although I loved, and one of the few regrets I have in my life is that I stopped playing baseball too young. And I ran track like my last year and a half of high school. You would know today. Everyone thinks I played football because I'm 6'1.5" and two something something
Do something. We won't get into.
something something. Something.
So wow, so you did so that's interesting how you did because usually you don't see the somebody that has their feet in both worlds, but now, I mean, this is almost like it's sort of like where you are at now is almost like like destiny, right? I mean, it's like it's the perfect fit of the enthusiasm about sports, but also to be out there and to entertain, right? I mean, what is your official? And again, I'll go back to some of your upbringing because I want to explore that just a little bit. But what is your official title at the Yard Goats?
Well, so I work full time for the Hartford Yard Goats for a number of years, from the fall of 2017 until COVID shut everything down. I was the director of event services,
Ah, I see.
and then I doubled as the on-field host.
Ah,
Which was sort of an unofficial title. Um, Bounced around during COVID, came back to the Yard Goats, and I am the sponsorship sales manager. So Monday through Friday, I'm not wearing a hat and a jersey. I've got my Yard Goats polo, and I'm making phone calls and sending emails in our sponsorship side of
well, all
things.
right. Well, I'm sure that I'm gonna be added to the list after this. So that's please.
I'm actually selling you. You don't know that yet.
That's fine. I'm okay. I'm okay. Sell me. We're big fans, as you know.
No.
So I see. So now you have you're an executive that also does on-field hosting.
Yeah, and that's not uncommon in the world of minor league baseball.
Is that really true? Okay.
A lot of people wear different hats, right? So we're fortunate at the Yard Goats to have a pretty large full-time front office staff, especially at the AA level. We tend to kind of have in approximately the 35 range of full-time year-round staff members. And that's a big staff in AA. There are organizations in other markets that would have, a third of that. And so your management team is also selling tickets, is also selling sponsorships, is also, dragging the dirt in the
Yeah.
seventh inning stretch. And so wearing multiple hats is very, very common. Now, what's a little less common is having somebody who has this kind of penchant for, sports entertainment, and performance. So a lot of people would be that host for the team, but I think it's a little bit less. I mean, if I'm being fully honest, I think it's much less common to have somebody who takes that hosting gig and then expands that into different teams, different venues, different markets, that in the way that I've kind of done. So somebody may play host, but it doesn't mean that they are sort of a professional sports entertainer by nature. You just, every team needs a goalie, and sometimes you get picked to be the goalie, and that's what you do. And sometimes you need someone who's going to hop on the microphone, and some people get picked to do it, and that's what they do during games. So,
Ah,
you
I
know,
see.
when you work in minor league baseball, you know, you're expected between the months of April and September to be there for all the games. That's part of the job. So you're working those, you get in at 9, 10 in the morning, and you're working till midnight when the game is over in season. Um, so my game role just happens to be the on-field host.
I see. I see. Okay, so so back to you. That's interesting. I'm curious also, given a lot of this sort of makes sense in terms of your what you did in high school. Were your folks inclined as in the arts? Are they what kind of work did they do when you were a kid?
Yeah, sure. So, no is the short answer. I came from a family that always sort of loved music. And so if you came to a holiday party, I have cousins and uncles who play guitar, and
Oh,
we'd
nice.
be one of those families that, a few bottles of wine and a few glasses of bourbon in, we'd just be singing all of the kind of family songs that. So I came from a family that loved music, listened to a lot of music, but certainly um, uh, did not come from performers. Later on, after I kind of took a liking to it, my late father did some shows, ended up on stage, which. But he was in his in his 50s and 60s when he decided to do that. He was a board member of the organization that I belonged to for many years, which is called CAST. It stands for the Children's Associated Summer Theater, and that's located in Manchester. Um, so we had both been on the board, and I remember that he did a couple of their smaller productions and got his fill of performance. But no, I think he would have told you he was not a performer by nature. He was an executive director of a nonprofit organization. They ran group homes for folks in the intellectual and developmental disability community, many of whom, though not exclusively, are members of the Jewish community. So he was the executive director of an organization called JCL for 35 years, the Jewish Association for Community Living. And his life's work and his vocation was managing, organizing, and caring for those less fortunate in, frankly, your community in West Hartford are where I think all of his group homes were. My mother was with the state of Connecticut for almost the entirety of her career. Um, she worked in protection and advocacy for folks with disabilities, and then transitioned into child advocacy, and finished the last, you know, 2 decades or so of her career in the office of the child advocate. And she had the hardest job in the state, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it was her job to basically review and report on kids who died in the state of Connecticut unexpectedly. So if it was a non-natural cause, my mom was the person who was kind of doing a review of whatever that circumstance would be. So I think in many ways, so I was a little bit of a black sheep in terms of kind of where my career ended up, because we were not a performative family. We were a social service family, a nonprofit family, people who often don't seek the limelight but are working to make the world a better place for others. And here I come trying to lead chants, cheers, and throw t-shirts later on. So, but I also believe that um, a lot of their time watching me grow up and participating in the things that I was doing, whether it was playing sports or whether it was going to a show or whatever the case might be, it was kind of a different world than they had been brought up in. And they were extraordinarily supportive day in and day out with kind of all the different permutations of things that interested me. And I know that they enjoyed it, and I know they were very proud of it. And I lost my father less than a year ago, last December, and there was no place he'd rather be than at Duncan Park watching a baseball game and his son go kind of do his thing.
Oh,
So, um, it's been a joy to give them joy as well too for me.
that's a really that's very interesting how things have played out for you. So when you finish, you said you went to college for a little bit. What do you do like mid-20s? Where do you working?
Yeah, so I was in the hospitality industry in Hartford. I am the the rare case of graduating with a bachelor's degree and then deciding to go work in restaurants. Uh,
Okay, right.
a lot of my friends would be in the restaurants while they were going to school, and then go off and do whatever they wanted to do. But I was in the hospitality industry.
Where did you work?
So I started at City Steam Brewery,
Oh yeah.
downtown Hartford.
Huh?
I was the kind of the service manager, so I ran the floor and the guests and all that. I was the
Yeah.
bar manager, and then a little ways into my time there, as a department, I was given the comedy club downstairs.
Oh
So
yeah, the
I ran
brouhaha.
the Brouhaha Comedy Club for about 2.5, 3 years, um, before transitioning to another restaurant in 2014. So I was with City Steam for some time, and that's where I learned a lot of my sort of my professional hospitality. I mean, I sort of always had this outgoing personality, but when you work in a brewery that has a comedy club, that's a place where people go to have a good time. And then I really sort of ingrained myself into that comedy club scene. Got to know a lot of the comedians who are on the circuit, from this is 2011, 12, 13. um, that was a blast. Kind of made a little bit of a name for myself in the club and among some of the comics. Um, got the club to, I think, a pretty well respected level among the professional comedian circuit. I was a judge one year in the Boston Comedy Festival up in Massachusetts,
Wow. Did you
which
ever
was
go up
fun.
and do it? Did you ever have a couple of minutes that you wrote of
So
material?
I never wrote material down. I considered it. I mean, I definitely had.
I think you have that in you.
Yeah. I introduced every show. So we had 3 shows every weekend, um, and I introed every show. So I'd get up there and I'd do the rules of the house, but I would do a little bit of crowd work, kind of figure out where the birthday parties were and the
Right.
bachelor parties and talk to them and everything else. And there was actually a strategy to that because I wanted to find out if anybody was too drunk or too unruly, because I'd have my eyes on
You
them
don't
to
want
make
to
sure
be
they weren't.
heckling. Right.
Yeah, so they weren't heckling and disrupting the show. But yeah, no, I mean, I definitely had some material hit every single weekend. Um, so I loved that. I mean, that was a
Oh,
great.
that's cool. So this makes
Yeah,
sense. All right. So you were working the brouhaha, which was a great. I
yep,
used to love to go there because I'm a huge fan of live comedy, and
yep,
any chance I get, I go and follow some of the bigger names now that have used Instagram to make themselves huge, like the like Theo Von and
yep,
Stavros is another guy that I follow. I don't
yep.
Stavi, you follow him.
Hmm.
He's a wild man. So like
I've watched some of those. I mean, uh, a lot of people don't know the first comic. This is well before my time. I mean, this was in the '90s. The first comedian to ever take the stage at the now unfortunately closed club in Hartford was Dennis Leary. Uh,
wow,
and
really?
if you ever went into the green room, which was basically a double wide closet that stunk like old beer, but you would look at the walls and you would see signatures from Jerry Seinfeld and Sarah Silverman, and yeah, I mean it got a lot. There were not too many comedians in the New York Boston market who had not done time over the years at City Sleep.
Wow, Jerry Seinfeld, really?
Yeah, his signature got like painted over inadvertently one day, but yeah, he was on that wall too.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, those guys are all, huge now. So, all right, so you then work through there, and then did you ever cook, or were you always like front of the house guy?
At City Steam, I was always front of the house. I wanted to go into the restaurant business. That was why I kind of made this decision. That the I'll tell you the story. I'll try to keep it short. But
Oh, sure,
my
take it.
parents were regulars at an Italian restaurant in Glastonbury. It was part of the Max Group. It's now closed. It was called Max.
Oh,
Yeah, Max Amore.
oh, I love that place.
Yeah.
I still remember the smell in there. It was so
Yep.
inviting, right?
I somewhere in here in the room I'm in, I actually, when they closed down, I went to their auction and got some of the pendant lights that they had,
Oh yeah, I
glass
love
blown
that place.
colorful lights.
That was
So
in Somerset Square, right
in
there.
Somerset Square, yep. So my parents were regulars there, always having dinner at the bar and everything else. And this was probably, I had just graduated college in 2009. So it was probably 2009, 2010. I was living at home, all that kind of stuff. And I remember I ordered at the bar, I ordered a chicken Caesar salad, and the chicken came out and they cut it, and it was undercooked. It was like pink and it was whatever.
Oh,
And and I'm not gonna make a big deal about anything, but I also can't eat it, so it's just whatever. So we called over the bartender, our buddy, Jeff, and Jeff comes over. He's like, he's mortified. He goes and gets the manager, and the manager comes over, and it was this guy. His name was Josue, and
okay.
Josue was in his probably his early 30s at the time, a little bit older than I was, and he's dressed in a nice suit, and he's glad handing the dining room, and everyone's laughing, having a great time, and I'm looking at this guy. So over time, and he buys the salad, and he buys a round of drinks, and he's so apologetic, and everything else is perfect and whatnot. So we have a great time. And I remember, like, some other time later, I see him one day after work. We're there, and he gets in his car, and he's driving like a 5 Series BMW and his suit, whatever. And I was like, this dude walks around a dining room all day, shaking people's hands, buying chicken Caesar salads. He's got a nice suit, a nice car. I want to be this guy, like I want this job.
You'd be a
So
host.
I offered him. I was like, I don't know anything about this business, but I could do what you do for a living. That seems cool to me. I didn't know anything about inventory and prep lists and washing dishes or any of that kind of stuff that comes with it. But I was like, maybe I want to own owning a bar could be cool. Maybe I'll own an Irish pub one day.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
done a semester in Dublin 2 years earlier, so whatever. But I knew nothing about the restaurant business. I offered to work for him for free just to learn the ropes. And he
Wow.
was like, "Yeah, hit me up. I'm busy this week. Hit me up next week, or holiday. Get me next month, and we'll get you in here." It never happened. So I applied on Craigslist to City Steam, took an interview, was hired on the spot, and that was my first job. So I did this with the intention at the time of maybe learning enough about the business to one day go own my own place. That was the goal when I was 22 years old. City Steam taught me everything I know about professional hospitality. Loved it, loved the environment. But after a few years, it felt like it had sort of run its course, and there was nothing else I was going to learn or do or grow into. Um, and I was contacted by a company that was opening a restaurant in Hartford, and they were looking for somebody to round out their management team. I was sort of poached, and I went and I opened up the Ted's Montana Grill on
Oh yeah.
Front Street.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So I worked for Ted Turner's restaurant company for a number of years. And that I felt was going to give me really a true business, a corporate business sense of the business, the industry. I learned so much about. That's where I was a cook. I learned every station. I
Oh,
learned how
you
to do.
cooked. Yeah,
Oh
you're a
yeah. I mean, I
li
wasn't a cook, but I could do every station on the line. You could put me on grill. You could put me on assemble, dessert, salad. And I had to make everything too. It was part of the training. There was a phenomenal kitchen. Everything was from scratch. I learned all the recipes and worked for that company for almost 4 years. And it got to the point where I would become a traveling manager for them. So if they had an unexpected opening in a different market, somebody quit or was terminated, they would send me in and fill that gap for a month while they hired and trained somebody new. So they had me working in Pennsylvania, they had me working in Indiana, they had me working in Massachusetts, they
but
had me.
but my guess, did you have, like, your own family at this point, or you're just a single guy and able to travel like that?
Yeah, I was able to travel. My now wife and I were dating at the time.
I see.
We met at City Steam actually, so we were kind of younger into our dating days in
That's
Connecticut.
amazing that that worked out, because usually those restaurant you say no more, right?
Amazing that it worked out.
I've never heard of that happening. It usually ends in
There's a few at City Steam. There are a few couples that are
wow.
are
Yeah, I
together
used to
with
do some,
kids.
before I did the divorce work, I used to that's why I know so many restaurateurs, and I would get called all the time to, like, deal with HR nightmares
Yeah.
because it's you know how it is, you're working there late and
Oh, I know how it is. I've seen everything.
you've seen it all. So you
Yeah.
meet there. So all right, so you were dating at the time, but you'd go what would you do? Like go to like the Indianapolis Ted's Montana Grill for a week to get them, give them a tune up and straighten them out and
Yeah, it was honest to God, it was more to work shifts so that their existing management team didn't have to work doubles all week long.
oh, I
So they
see.
would, so yes, I would go in there and kind of have objective eyes and see things and try to, get back to the standards of the company, right? So if I'd come in and, hey, you're not doing that right, here's what I do to make this a little bit better. So there was a part of that, but I wasn't a corporate trainer, and I wasn't there to be a snitch on what was going wrong.
Oh,
I
I
was
see.
just there, to operate the business until they had
You're
the.
almost like a ringer or somebody that would just,
Yeah, right. I wasn't John Tapper going in trying to say, what you got, that wasn't my
no,
job.
you'd be like, "Hey, how can I help?"
I was there to help. I was there to make sure that their managers got shifts off, basically. So I do a lot of closes. I mean, frankly, I'd be in the hotel and I'd get to work at 3 o'clock and I'd be there till close. And it was my job just to make sure that the ship was running,
And it was all consistently the same menu throughout the franchise, right?
98%, but yes.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So you do that for 4 years, and, any front of the house work at Ted's?
Any front of the house work at Ted's. Oh yeah. I mean, I was by role, I was a front of house manager, but every manager at Ted's has to learn. So I wasn't the kitchen manager. I wasn't the general manager. I was the front of house service manager.
I see.
But because of the way the company's structured, because of the type of organization it is, you absolutely have to be able to hop on any station on the line at any time. You have to be able to execute a prep list. You get there at 7 o'clock in the morning, figure out what you've got, do inventory, all that kind of stuff. So yes, both are true.
And so what happens, and then what year do you wrap up with Ted's?
I wrap up with Ted's at 2017 in Duncan Park, Dunkin' Donuts Park at the time. Well, okay, so here's an important transition. I'm living in downtown Hartford with my, at the time, girlfriend, Victoria, now wife, and mother of our two girls. And she's working for a different bar restaurant. She's managing for a company that just opened up a spot in Manchester called Dave and Buster's. So
Mm.
she was part of the opening management team for that company, and they would send her to different locations as well too. So things have occurred. The year is 2015. I'm at Ted's bouncing around here and there, but my home base is somewhere between Front Street and Evergreen Walk in South Windsor. I bounce between the two.
Okay.
The New Britain Rockcats announced that they plan to move down the street to downtown Hartford.
Right.
I live 2 blocks away from the proposed location of the stadium.
Right.
I'm working for a business that's in downtown Hartford on Front Street. And I am part of some groups and associations that have to do with sort of business development in downtown area. I become a fan of this idea just because I'm the target market, a next door neighbor, and trying to get my fingerprints sort of on the city. After the team gets named, after the relocation is now in the works, essentially, right, as time has gone on, we've gone from approvals and proposals to sort of concrete action. The team puts out an APB on its social media account that it's looking to hire mascots. They're going to hold mascot auditions like 5 weeks in the future, so it's a save the date essentially.
Okay.
So I put in my phone and go, wow, that would be a great way to get some free tickets and a little extra beer money on the side. Because my schedule is all over the place, right? And I work a lot of nights. So I've got a lot of mornings and afternoons open. Long story short, I become the first professional mascot for the Hartford Yard Goats.
Who knew this? This is such good stuff.
Part-time, here and there, doing little leagues and doing gymnasiums and doing school appearances and everything else. There is no stadium. The team plays all of 2016 on the road, 142 games or something like that. Every game is away because the stadium is not built. It's not completed in time to host baseball in Hartford. By the time the team is in Hartford and the stadium is completed, I no longer have kind of the time commitment they need to have the mascot be in the ballpark for every game, right?
Right. Right.
especially since games are at night. I work a lot of nights. So the first season, inaugural season at Dunkin' Donuts Park, I'm not a mascot.
Mhm.
I'm just a baseball fan at this point. I go to a game to celebrate my father's 60th birthday. We surprise him with a suite and 40 of his family and friends.
Oh my god, how nice.
It was such a treat, an incredible day, and the suite that we got was one of the ones right next to the dugout.
Oh, the one, the bus, the Datco suite or whatever
Yeah, I
that
think we were in the better built, so we were on the home side,
oh, the home
and
side,
it
okay.
was just incredible. I mean, I was like, it was Disney World as far as I was
Right,
concerned.
and it's one of those, like, moments where you're just like, "This is, like, a core memory," and
Yep, core memory unlocked. And on that day, and again, I'm part of the organization to some extent. I mean, I'm a part-time promotional worker, but I know the front office team. I know some of the executive management team at this point, and I've really bought into the brand. I was like in a couple news articles when the stadium was being built of being like a downtown fan of a team that didn't exist. The name was ridiculous and went through all of that kind of press and everything else. So I decide on that day, after that game is over, I sent a text message to he was the general manager and the assistant general manager. Now it's team president and general manager, and said, whenever you have a job that fits what I do for a living, let me know. So I'm gonna quit my job and I'm gonna come work for you. So that was in June of 2017. In late September, early October of 2017, I get a message back. It says, hey, we're thinking of redoing how we handle our outside events and hospitality for non-game days, like in the off season. We want somebody who has a background in hospitality management, food and beverage, because we want someone to like help create our menu and all this other stuff. So I apply for and become the director of event services for the Hartford Yard Goats in October of 2017. And it is my job to utilize the stadium as an event venue year round and grow off-season business essentially, and do so by having strong catering and hospitality and function spaces that are well designed, well outfitted, well decored, and put on a ton of events. So if you were doing your company's holiday party, if you were a high school team playing baseball when the Yard Goats were away, if you're a bar mitzvah or a birthday party or any of those kinds of things, corporate breakfast, and we got into weddings and everything else, you would go through my office to do that. But I had nothing to do with game days. In fact, game days, I'd be able to clock out and leave before the game started because I was working all the other nights when everybody else got to go home. So this role was yes, it was in sports, it was at a sports venue, it was for a sports team, but it had very little to do with the actual professional sport that was being played. And we, the team, we grew business tremendously. I mean, in the first year I was there, I think we, more than doubled the number of events that they had from the
oh,
first season. So it was going very, very well, and everything was on an upward trajectory. At the time, um, we had moved just before I took this job to Weathersfield. I bought a house in Weathersfield, which is where we still live. So we moved out of downtown Hartford, but we're still nearby and really had kind of planted our roots. We didn't get married until 2021, so I'm still, we're dating, but I don't, we know no kids and everything else. So I do this job until COVID cancels the 2020 season,
right.
essentially. Um, but that was kind of, my full-time job was in the off season. So I get the job in October, so we're in the off season, and then we peel the calendar into 2018. In that off season, I think it was probably around January or February. I'm sitting in my office one day, and my coworker Caroline, she now lives in New York, no longer with the organization, but she was the head of uh, like creative and marketing and branding and social and everything else. She was kind of the creative person. She walks in my office and she says, hey, I think I'm quoting, says, hey, you used to work at a comedy club, right? And I said, yeah. And she goes, well, we're thinking of redoing our on field host position because the girl that had the job for the first year moved to Pennsylvania. So we have to hire for this role. And we're thinking about kind of making it a little bit more entertaining, more comedic, getting a little more, production value out of the role. And I was like, oh yeah. And she goes, so I'm hoping you might know some comedians that we might be able to go talk to. That's, mm. All right. I was hoping that was going to go in a different direction, but that's fine.
Right.
So I said, well, I mean, I know a gajillion comedians. I just don't know who's in the market to become a full-time employee at a minor league baseball stadium, maybe not even full-time, maybe a part-time employee. Like all the comedians I know are busy trying to be comics and get
Right.
an HBO showcase and a Netflix series and everything else. They're not, or they're on cruises, or they're not auditioning to make their way to minor league baseball.
Good.
But I gave her some names of people I knew. I think there might have been some of them even auditioned. But I said to her, I said, well, but that sounds like something I'd be interested in. And she said, well, we thought about you, but you're so busy on all of the off days and off season that adding games into your schedule is going to be a nightmare for you. And I was like, that might be true, but that's
Primate, right?
yeah, but I love being here. I'm here very intentionally, and I don't have kids, and I don't, so why not see if it works? She's like, well, if you want to audition, you can audition. We're gonna hold auditions. So I said, fine. So I go to audition. I think 19 people auditioned that day, if I remember correctly.
Tell me about this audition because I'm always like I listen a lot of times to I'm a Howard Stern guy. I've been listening to him
Yeah,
for years, and he always has the SNL guys on, and he always asks them about that audition, right? And sometimes those videos surface, and they
yeah,
always talk about how it's just so awful because you walk in and like there's just people sitting there, and you're like, da-da! Like,
correct.
tell me
So,
about that. I want to
so
know.
I've done I think 3 formal auditions.
Right,
Um, this so okay, I'll tell you. So this was the first one I had ever done. And when I say formal auditions, I've auditioned for a lot in my life, but sports announcing 3 formal auditions. The first was the Yard Goats. So you walk into the club upstairs. There's a little platform stage. They got the TVs are on and a screen and everything else, and you're sitting there. And I'm sitting there with my coworkers, like these people I know, you know,
right.
like a meeting with them that morning, and now I'm sitting in front of
And
them.
now you gotta do a dog and pony.
Right, like right. So they know who I am. They know
Dance for
the
me,
character.
Connor. Dance.
But there's nothing preset about this whatsoever. This is not a done deal. Like I
Oh, right.
absolutely
You're like
yep,
everyone else. You're getting the
correct.
same shake as everyone else.
And I don't know what they're gonna do. I mean, I don't have like
So you don't have material, nothing. You're just
nothing.
like, what do you want me to do?
Walk cold turkey, walk in, I'm on stage,
Wow.
I'm sitting
Are
there.
you like you must be nervous.
I no, I'm not nervous for this. I mean, it's a little bit funny and I'm trying to take it seriously, but it's also like my coworker.
You also have the advantage, right? Because you know all the people and you're like, what do I got
You
to
would
lose?
think, but I would suggest to you that that could be a disadvantage. I mean, you
Okay,
might think that that's an advantage, but so
fair enough.
and I don't remember precisely all the elements, but basically what they did is they had elements from the script that they wanted to hear you read. Okay. They had a video of one of the kids' baby goat races, and
All
they
right.
they wanted you to announce it as though you're at a game. Um, while you're watching the screen. There's 5 people in the room, but you got to pretend you're at the horse race, kind of So there were elements like that that were put into it, and your job is to be funny and witty and genuine and articulate and all of those kinds of things. So I do the audition, and I mean, and everyone took it seriously. It was not, it was they're not going to hand the mic over to somebody if they think it's going to make the reputation of the organization worse, right? At the end of the day. So they might like me, they might know me, they might have it, but
There's nothing that can kill a fan base faster than somebody who's boring and
yep, that a crappy
right,
experience. Yeah,
right.
absolutely. So after all the auditions are over, I sit down with them, and the general manager, Mike, says to me, he goes, "Listen, 10 to 1 in terms of like where you are relative to kind of the pool of applicants. Like it's like just what you bring to the table is a different level of entertainment value and confidence and articulation and all this." He said, "But I got to be honest, we're really concerned that you're going to get burnt out. Because if we give you if you're expected to be at all the games, you're basically working, you know, 300 and whatever, 20 out of 360 days in the year. And that's just too much for anybody to handle." I said, "Well,
There's a
yes,
fix
but,
here. There's a
you
fix
know,
here.
yeah, like, but I really want to do this. And I love it. And so I said, why can't we treat each other with mutual professional respect? If my full-time work suffers, right? I'm not, I'm running late, or I'm not here, or I'm not selling, or any of those kinds of things. If you see a dip in my full-time job, hold me accountable to that. And I swear to you that if I'm getting burnt out, I
I'll
will
tell you.
tell you. And so they said, if you really want it, we want you to be the primary guy. So there were three of us. There was myself, a gentleman named Frankie, who does, I think, still works for the Wolfpack, and my coworker in the events team, who now works in the governor's office. Her name is Mulaney. So the three of us were the hosts for that 2018 season. And Mulaney was there the whole time. I was kind of like the primary guy, and then Mulaney would be my co-host. And if I couldn't be there, then Frankie or Mulaney couldn't be there, then Frankie would kind of be our third person. Um, and it was great, and I absolutely loved it. And I was nervous when I first stepped on the field, but eventually it becomes a little bit muscle memory, and you're just kind of used to the environment. And in pretty short order, I think it just elevated the level of fan experience and performance expectation and entertainment between innings. People could hear what was being said, and liked the joke, and it turned into a lively environment. And I really took to it. Um,
And the rest is history, right? I mean, then now
well,
you're
so I think it was May of 2018. I could be off, but I'm pretty sure it was May. Um, the University of Connecticut is scheduled to play a baseball game at Dunkin' Donuts Park as kind of their, part of their season. Now, because I'm the events director, this game falls under my purview largely, because this is a non-Yard Goats event taking place. We are having a conference call with the folks at UConn, and they requested use of all of kind of the Yard Goats promotional infrastructure, um, including hosts. Now, I was scheduled to be off for that game, so I'm part of the planning of it, but I wasn't going to be here to participate in the game. And we muted the conference call, and our team president says to me, he goes, "You want to come in and host the game, instead of being off?" And I said, "Sure." So I come in, I host UConn baseball game on behalf of the Yard Goats, but I kind of execute the script that UConn has put together with their sponsors and all that stuff. And I remember there was a promotion, that was you had an inflatable cow. It was like a beach ball material. It's a 3-foot cow, and it was sponsored by Cabot Creamery, and it was called the Cabot Crowd Cow. I had never seen this before the actual game day. I don't know anything about this, but it's kind of like musical chairs. You hit the cow, you hit it all over the place, and whoever's left with the cow when the music stops, you win the prize. During the course of this promotion, I improvise some alliterative comedy. So it's bop that Bessie, crush that cow, whatever, something bovine, whatever it was. I mean, I came up with like every word for cow, and then had some call to action, and people are cracking up, and it's the funniest thing. So the game ends, and folks from UConn come over and they say, "That was phenomenal. You were so good. Would you do anything with us? Like, we don't know what yet, but like, would you be willing to work with us?" So I was like, "Sure. I mean, it's up to the goats. I'm here, but yeah, I mean, if they're cool with it, I'm cool with it." They originally wanted me to do the football season that year. But I had some like weddings on those Saturdays and couldn't commit to the timing. And they were like, "Well, if you can't do every game, then we're probably just going to let it ride. But what about basketball?" I was like, "What about basketball?" So Yard Goats were great about allowing me the flexibility to do it. And so audition number 2 was this one, I will admit, was a little bit more contrived. But the promotional marketing staff invite me to Gamble Pavilion to have an audition. So I'm at an empty
oh,
Gamble Pavilion,
God.
on like 11 o'clock on a weekday morning or something. I was just like yelling,
Hello, hello, hello.
yeah, like, section 222, make some no. It was just like the worst thing. But they wanted to hear me on the mic and have an audition for, the sake of formality and all that. Um, so I get the gig as the game day host for UConn men's and women's basketball in the fall of 2018. I do pick up football the following year for the 2019 season. Um, and now the rest is sort of history.
Wow.
Um, you know, and being able to come back into it in a post-COVID environment has been
Are
really.
you still affiliated with UConn?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
You do the UConn and the Yard Goods.
I do more than that. So I do yard goats baseball game. I'm sponsorship sales manager. That's my full-time job.
Right.
That's what that's what pays the bills. I am the on-field host also for game days for the Hartford Yard Goats. I'm the on-court host for UConn women's basketball. On-court host for the back-to-back two-time, or six-time, but back-to-back national champion UConn men's basketball. The on-field host for UConn football. I'm the on-court host for the Connecticut Sun, and am now I work three of the NCAA's national championship events. January is the FCS football championship in Frisco, Texas. In May, I do the lacrosse championships. I've done that for the last 3 years. And in March, April, the Elite Eight and the Sweet 16 for the men's regional final in one of the four bracket
Wow.
matches,
Wherever that is.
wherever that may be. Last year it was LA. It's either probably going to be Indy or Atlanta this year for me, hopefully, but we'll see. It could be San Francisco.
I mean, look what you've done. I mean, you've built this like just, an enthusiastic guy living in an apartment in Hartford, working at a at a local bar and saying like, I support this, I want to do this. And you've like parlayed this into this enterprise.
You are absolutely correct.
You have a lot to be proud of. That's
Thank you.
great. So let me, as we're winding down, I want to talk to you just a little bit about. So the theme of my podcast is, as you know, I'm a divorce and family lawyer, and but I have a an
I just need to interject, babe. He asked me to do the podcast. It has
yeah.
nothing to do
Well,
with
you know what
it.
the funny thing is we
Love you
do
to
all
death.
the time? When somebody does a podcast, like I had Dennis House on here, and all these people, sometimes, you share your location with your spouse. I always say, please text your spouse like that you're doing a podcast, like you're in my pod studio. You're not doing a consult because somebody
Yeah,
one time was like, the fuck you doing at a
yeah.
divorce lawyer's office? I said, no, 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 I'm just doing a pod. Um, so yeah, no, the best people always say to me, like, what's the best advice to like not get divorced? And I tell them, stay married. And but that I mean, I'm not just being glib. Like you got to think about that a little bit.
That's an active thing to do. That is a you have to be very intentional about that. So
Intentional. You have to stay married. So it's called I'll Call My Guy. And it was going to be I Got a Guy, but that was trademarked. But the concept is similar, right? And guy is, I always tell people I have a lot of women on here too, and they know that what I mean. Like a guy, like it could be a woman or a man. And what I like to explore on here is I obviously like to learn what people do and how they got there and what was how their youth sort of shaped what where they are. And certainly I can see how yours did that. But it's really the nature of relationships. Like because when you say I'll call my guy, that the implication there, right, is that you have a connection with somebody, and the connection is that you can call them and you can rely on them, you trust them, you've built a sort of a connection, and that could be a sort of a tenuous connection, but could also be a very strong connection. Like I'll call my guy, like I need, like I need tickets to a game, or I need who fixes my car, or I need somebody to talk to, whatever it is. You got a guy, or I'll call my guy. So with you, you develop, and maybe unawarely, but I think intentionally too. Like when you're at a game, like you're developing a relationship with everybody in the stands. You're not walking up to them and shaking their hand, but you're developing a connection, like a newscaster does with the people that they just look into a teleprompter and they read the news. They bring the news. They're building relationships with viewers that they sometimes can't even see. And so you're doing that to a large extent too, because people that come to the games, they learn that you're a fixture there, that you have a certain tempo, that you have a certain comedic sort of flair about you and whatnot, and that hopefully makes their experience elevated and better, and then brings them back to the game. That's right. That's what you want. You're like, oh,
spot
that
on.
guy is great. So
Spot
my question to you is, how do you do that? Like, what
on.
is your way of cultivating and nurturing that relationship? Um, your guys, if you will, which are the fans
Yeah.
in all of these arenas. Sometimes, again, the Yard Goats folks, we know you because we come there, we live here. But if I'm going to LA to some Final Four match, they're gonna say, "Oh, who's this Irishman here?" Like with he
Mhm.
seems like a nice guy, but like, how do you like for the first time build that relationship? Is that where you take the cues from your comedic experience, where you come into a crowd cold and you got to work the crowd and you have to feel the energy and not bomb and you have to you want to kill, you don't want to bomb, right? So you want to like tell me about that a little. Can we explore that for a couple minutes?
Yeah, I mean, you are asking the question, right? I mean, at its core, I get a lot of how'd you get this? I get a lot of, what's your favorite place to work? I get a lot of those things. What you're asking me is to identify an answer on behalf of the fan base, why they value what I do,
Right.
and what awareness level do I have about that value that I then take and copy, emulate, be consistent, etc. So I'll answer your question, and I'll start by way of just a quick story. So I was doing one of the UConn games this past week. We had for timing purposes, we just had Gino's record-breaking 1,217th win. In the game before that, there was a men's game up at Gamble Pavilion, and there's a former athletic office employee who now works for another university, and his on-court host is a younger kid. He's an alumni of the school, and he sent him up to UConn to spend some time with me, watching me, talking to me, and learning about kind of what my process is. So I had to articulate this like 3 or 4 days ago in a way that I don't usually have to. So I'm going to use that experience of talking not to a protege or anything like that, but somebody who's there to kind of observe, witness, digest. It is rare that I'm in an environment, because I work for all the teams and I spend all my time. It's rare that I'm watching somebody else do what I do in a different venue, right? That I don't see a lot of those because I'm the one who's doing the work. And the same is true for him. He has not had a lot of opportunity to see somebody else do this. What I explained to him and what I'll say to you to address your very pointed question is there are some really core elements for me. First and foremost is I need to be almost universally approachable. I do not have the luxury in the way that even players and coaches do. Some do a better job of this than others in different teams and settings. If someone calls my name, 100% of the time, I need to respond to that person. I got to turn around. I got to listen to the kid who wants a baseball or a t-shirt or an autograph or wants me to get a player to give him a bat. I mean, the answer is not always yes, but I have to be accessible in almost all cases. By being accessible, plus loving what I do, when I have interactions with people, what they take away is the fact that I'm very genuinely enjoying my time. When I go through the kids lineup at a basketball game and I talk to them, I got to make them feel very special. They're part of the team, right? I want them to not be nervous. I want them to know that they can trust and rely on me. I want to set their expectations so that they're not concerned that they're going to, do the wrong thing. And I'm often dealing with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids who are nervous to be standing in front of, 10 to 15,000 people, right? In all of my interactions with fans and all of my interactions with people on the concourse, people on social media, people, I mean, in all forums and venues, I feel compelled to portray a consistent authenticity and an appreciation for the fact that I know that there are people that would kill to do what I do for a living. And I am so fortunate to be in this position and have cultivated this sort of enterprise, as you talked about it, but that this is a lot of people's dream job, and they
Mhm.
don't even necessarily know it. They might just want to work in sports, or and I've been able to do it for 7 years at just about every major sports venue in my home state for most of the major professional sports teams that we have in our market. Now, I know it's not the Dallas Cowboys, not the New York Yankees, not the Boston Celtics, I know what Connecticut has and doesn't have. But if it was the Celtics or the Yankees, or if I was in Dallas or LA or New York or Boston, I probably wouldn't have this job. The likelihood of being able to forge the relationships that you talk about, to me, have been only achievable in a place like the state of Connecticut, because I'm not a broadcast personality by trade who then gets invited to come do this gig for a sports team because I have some celebrity status or name recognition. I have had to grow this from washing dishes in Hartford into this thing. And I acknowledge that, and I tell my story with a high degree of pride. So the how is that when people see me, I want them to know that I love being part of their experience, and that if they need something or they want something, they can ask me the question. Whether you're an 8-year-old kid who wants a player's bat that I can't give you, or you want me to autograph something for you, or you're a student who wants to be involved in a half court shot contest, or whatever it might be, all of those interactions have to have wide eyes, a smile on my face, a high five. I want them to know who I am. That's why I've left my name in my name, right? This whole game day Connor thing. And when people say it out loud or call my name, I got to turn around and answer them. It's a lot. Um, it's pretty nonstop. And as the role has grown and the notoriety has grown and the visibility has grown, it follows me to restaurants, grocery stores, and the DMV, and
They're like,
walking
hey, you're Connor.
constantly. I tell people I think there's like an old Geico commercial where Money is walking down the street and everybody's like, "Hey, Money," or whatever it is.
You.
I was crossing the street at work and a guy rolled his window down and started the Yukon chant. Just because he recognized me, and that is, I mean, that's a very regular thing now, and that's a different environment. That's not something I predicted.
Let me ask you this final question. If I were to interview your wife, and I won't, but if I did, what would she say that are you accessible Connor at home or are you
Can
closed
you
off?
ask her tomorrow? She doesn't. It's not good to ask her. Um, I would think that if she were being honest with you, she would say that with two kids, our youngest daughter is 5 weeks old.
Oh,
Um, that the job is growing at exactly the time that the family responsibilities are growing, and that is hard. It's harder than I predicted. I had I had 9 games in the last 3 weeks, I think. That's a lot of time to be away, and it's a lot of it's a big ask for her and our support network to do that, and it's a big ask for me to spend that much time. Oh, that's 9 dinners and
but I mean,
times.
not just accessible. I mean, I'm saying, but the time when you are home and you talk about, her coming up to you, like, do you find yourself having to recharge when you're home? Are you able to give her that, like, hey, Connor, like, connect with me? Are you able to do that because you give so much, outside of your home?
Yeah, I would like to think I'm better at that than I probably am,
Okay.
because I'm walking home at 11:30 at night. There's not much I can give at 11:30 when she's done all the dishes and the bottles and the cleaning and and she did the bedtimes and the diapers and all that stuff. So I would probably say to you that I think I do a great job of that. And I think if you were to ask her, she would say, no, it is hard. And she's consciously aware of how challenging that is, but she's also extraordinarily supportive of that.
Mhm.
And she's cerebrally conscious of what that investment is. But yeah, man, I mean, if I'm out of the house at 8:30 in the morning and I'm not back until 11:30 at night, and I've just exhausted myself, in doing my thing, um, it the next day, breakfast, I need to be all me. Like, I don't want you to get up. I'm gonna go make pancakes. I got, or whatever. Uh, I try to take that and take the direction from her as to what can I do that's going to be most valuable with the time that I do have to offer. Um, but she also doesn't want to be, pointing me in the direction of chores all the time either, because she understands the obligation that I have too. So it's tough. It's a balance, and I'll tell you what, the answer could be very different week to week and month to month and season to season. So again, ask me tomorrow, and I bet you get a different answer out of her than today. No, I got a guy I got to talk to on a
Got a
podcast.
guy. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, listen, thank you for doing this. I know that your time is valuable. We're big fans of yours. We love how you entertain us, and you always have a great attitude and make the event, more entertaining. And you're a gentleman, and really appreciate you. So thank you for doing this. And
thank you for letting me tell a bit of my story.
sure. Oh,
I'm
I
happy.
great story.
Yeah,
So all right, let me. My kids are actually sitting in the other room because it's my son's birthday. Could he say hi? Is that okay?
of course.
Rexy, Riley. Yeah, they're sitting in the room. Rex, he's going. We have a soccer party. He just turned 10 on Thursday.
Nice.
We're going to this place in Bristol. This is Rex here. He is. He just turned 10. Soccer.
What's up, Rex? How we doing, big dog?
And this is Riley.
Hi, Riley. Were you guys were at the game when I saw you, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, Rex is a huge Premier League soccer. I took him to England this summer. We went.
Who's your team?
Arsenal.
Who are you?
Chelsea.
So we went to Chelsea.
Did you? You went to Stamford Bridge.
We went to Stamford Bridge. We went there.
Nice.
We toured it. We got a kit there. We went to
Nice.
Etihad. We went there.
Yeah, yeah.
We should have gone to Fulham when we were. Is that Fulham, the one that's down the street from Chelsea?
Yeah, I think yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
Craven Cottage.
No,
Craven
not
Cottage.
Tottenham.
We went to Tottenham too.
We went to Tottenham too.
We saw Tottenham Bayern game
Nice.
match when we got there. But yeah, they're playing right now, Chelsea.
Chelsea finished. I was watching them this morning, but Arsenal are playing right now.
Spoil it. What happened?
When I was watching, they were winning 1-0.
Who was?
Chelsea.
Look it up here because Chelsea's the one that has 40 players, right? They have all that
Yeah,
money.
listen, I was a bigger Chelsea fan when I was at City Steam.
They won 2-1 over Leicester.
2-1. Yeah, when I was at City Steam, I was watching much more regularly and avidly. I liked that team a lot more. And then we had the whole ownership kerfuffle. But I chose my team. I didn't like grow up a Chelsea fan or anything like that. I wanted to invest more time in EPL. I wanted to wake up and watch matches. And I said, well, if I'm going to do that, I need to root for somebody. If I'm going to root for somebody, I want there to be a pretty good chance that they're going to finish top of the table, top four. Man U was off the table altogether. Arsenal was kind of on the list. There were a few, Liverpool was off the table altogether. There were teams that were absolutely nuts. And then I was watching one day, I think it was like in the FA Cup, maybe semifinal, probably in like 2011. I think it was 11. Didier Drogba takes a free kick and he kicks it. You set up like a 7-man wall, but like the fifth guy is your guy. So it's, your player, and then there's one more. And right as Didier goes to kick it, whoever the other Chelsea player was dips out of the wall, and the ball curves through that gap and goes upper 90. And my mind was blown. And I was like, this is the team I'm going to follow. So I became a Chelsea fan on purpose.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, that's we love. But we were watching that Nottingham Forest was like fourth right now. And I have a friend from college that his father was English, and he's followed Nottingham Forest forever. And I texted him, I'm like, what? They're losing to Arsenal right now, but they just but like he like loves them, and they're doing well. But we actually took a train up to Manchester when we were there to see. We got
Cool.
a tour of Emirates. And
do you watch games around here at all?
Oh, yeah, he goes to Hartford Athletic all the time.
There's a pub there was a brewery in Manchester off of New State Road. It's my wife's cousin's father that owns it, and it's called Second Bridge Brewing.
Still there?
Yeah, still there. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's still there. I think they made it through COVID, and it's small, but it's great. It's like all the scarves, all the colors. I mean, it is a soccer watchers bar.
Really?
So when you go during the morning, yeah, it's like one of the ones locally that's pretty good. And then there's another English pub that just opened in Manchester, which I forget what it's called, on Main Street.
Oh yeah, where the old Lucky Taco was.
Where the old Lucky Taco was. That I think they're a pretty big watch party place too. I just never make it over.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes we went to see like at Primavera in Hartford. We saw plays.
Yeah.
That's good. So
cool.
All right, Connor, listen.
Have fun.
Young kids, wife, go do your thing. We'll talk to you soon and see you at the games, brother.
Thanks, bye. I'll send you an email so you have it from me. If you want to do anything at the ballpark, let me know.
We do. Actually, I was talking with one of your colleagues about getting some season tickets.
Cool.
So yeah, I forgot who it was, but we're in touch. So yeah, send me an email.
Sounds good.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks. Bye, Rex. Bye, Riley.